Welcome back to another episode of Mind Your Head. This week, Joel Mohamed is joining me in the studio. Now, I've known Joel for a while, but never ever heard his story like this before. Joel shares the struggles he faced in his early years growing up in a religious cult and how that affected him later in life. He speaks openly about how and why he left the religion, the reconnection with his Aboriginal culture, and how that shaped the man he is today. Joel is the most humble, hardworking, and down-to-earth people you'll ever meet. And it's an absolute privilege to have him on the podcast. Now let's get into it. Joel Mohamed.
Elliott Hagen.
Thanks for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
No worries.
I've been really looking forward to this chat ever since you sent me that message.
Yep.
I've been really interested because I've never heard your story before.
Yep.
And I'll be honest with you, when you sent me that message a couple of months ago, I thought you were taking the piss.
Usually it is me taking the piss, but
yeah, because I've known you for a while, and I've got mates that have known you longer and better than I do, and that's never come up in conversation.
Never.
So when you sent it through, I was like, this. You should have seen. I don't know if it comes up the read bubbles. How like I was typing then deleting, and I'm like, is he being serious? I couldn't tell.
It's funny because I've never really shared this story with anyone because it's something that happened, I guess maybe 15 years ago now, maybe 17 years ago now, but it had such an impact in my life and how I grew up and how it made me to be sort of the person in or who I am, and then also how to reflect back on that and say, well, this is actually a bit strange.
Very strange.
Yeah. So
my first question would be then, what would be your earliest childhood memory growing up in a religious cult?
What I can remember, it's always been like since I can remember it, I've been in this church. And the first part of our church, we started at a little hall at the back of Nambour. And it was, for me at that time, that was normality. Like, that's just what we did. We always went to church on Sunday. We always had, our whole community was surrounded by these church members. We did Bible study on Wednesdays. We did, any activity that we did was involved in this church. So it was sort of, at that time, it just seemed normal.
Yeah, you didn't know any different.
Until, obviously I started growing up and realising that, hey, maybe this isn't normal, or this isn't for me. Earliest memories I can remember is pretty much at that hall in Nambour. So it was like at the, where Burnside is, it was sort of a bit further down from that. There was some community centre there, and that's where it was. And at that time it was probably, I reckon, 300 people, and then it grew and grew, and I didn't realise at the time of how big the actual cult it was, but it's it's Australia wide, and there's big hubs sort of everywhere around the states.
Yeah, and that word cult, I remember chatting to you about it last time I saw you, and I thought it was a derogatory term used by non-believers at that church. But that brochure you gave me describing everything about it, they openly use it to describe themselves.
And the actual religion itself is an off-branch of other religions and other followings of Christianity, I guess.
So what's the name of the religion?
It's sort of on its own here. It's Christianity, but like a very aggressive form of Christianity where you're not allowed to, have friends outside of church. You're not allowed. You only can marry inside the church. Mostly business is done within the people in the church realm. Yeah, if you're friends with someone outside the church, you'll get heavily reprimanded. If you excel of anything that the church doesn't like outside of the church, it's also heavily reprimanded. And that's just not from your peers that are in the church as well. It's from the leaders and then your family as well. They all have their own little say on what you should do and how you should believe and how you should act.
So what would that look like if you get reprimanded? What would that?
That'd be like, so back then it was weird because they have their own little, leaders in the church. And then, there were certain families that had a lot of power. And then it was like the sons or the daughters of that family, obviously the next generation, and they were a few years older than me. So then they would be like my leaders, I guess, in that. So I left when I was 16. Through that period from about 12 to 16, it was like guys that were probably 30 at that age, and then they'd be like, you'd go into, they'd say, oh, let's have a chat, but then there'd be 4 of them there just grilling you about, this is a cult, what you're believing in or how you're behaving is not what this church is about. Like, really like an
intimidation
and a bit of sort of bit of emotional sort of abuse, if that would just like to, because you at that stage and when I was growing up, it was sort of that's all on you, and that's what I put my whole identity into, and then when you're realizing, hey, I don't actually think this is me, then you start fighting back against that, and obviously as well in the teenage years,
especially when you're a kid though. Like I think that when you got adults telling you what to do when you're a child, you don't second guess it. You just go with it and say, well, believe what they're telling you is the truth.
And then they're your role models, I guess, in that space as well. So you look up to them and go, oh, how do I be like them? How do I
fit in?
Yeah, how do I fit in? And that was the main thing as well, as I guess when I was around that 12 to 13 year age, I started thinking, hey, look, this is not for me, but the fear of letting that known and actually trying to get out on my own was the biggest part for me. So I sort of held on to it for about 4 years of just just show up and
play the game
pretty much until the right time is to get out when I can.
So going back, how did you get involved in the first place? Is it through your
family? Yeah. So family was heavily involved in it. Just not like my cousins and all that sort of stuff. It was immediate family. So mum and dad, all my brothers and sisters. So I have 3 sisters and a brother, and we were all heavily involved in it until my brother was the first one to get out, and he was 18. So there's 5 years difference between me and him. So at that stage I was 13, and I went, oh, there is a way out. Yeah,
I was going to say, did it give you much confidence?
Yeah, it gave me much confidence, but then it was also the fear of then how he was treated when he left.
Was it bad?
Yeah. So we were told not allowed to talk to our brother anymore.
Full disowned him.
Yeah, full disowned him, and that
was from your parents.
Yeah, that was from our parents.
Oh wow!
And that was from other people had left at that time, and you saw how they were treated as well. And you grow up with he's my brother. Like he's one of my best mates now still.
Yeah.
And just seeing that when that happened at that time, and obviously 13 years old, so it was like I'm not old enough yet to be treated like that. I need to be safe.
yeah, exactly.
Until till the time is right, and then I had it pretty made up in my mind pretty early from that 12 years old that I was
like, you had a plan.
Yeah, that I'm ready to exit.
Yeah,
when the time is right. Yeah, my brother left first. I was then the second one to leave about 4 years later. The next then was my little sister. She left about pretty much straight after me. And then it took another, let's say, 4 years then for my older sister to leave. And then my oldest sister didn't leave until about 4 years ago now. And it's just, it's crazy. Like when we talk about old stories or when we talk about...
Do you just get together and have a chat about it?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah. And it's like how effed up was that? Pretty much. And as well, like, because they had people, especially my older sister, like she moved down to uni in Toowoomba. She married in the church, so her husband was in the church as well, and when she left, it was that excommunication, and she's grown up with it her whole life, and when she left, she was 36. So
wow, so how did it go leaving when she was married with someone? Did he leave as well?
Yeah, he left. He left.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Okay. So they both left. They had he's a chippy, and they were building the pastor or the head guy in Toowoomba's house and doing renovations there, and
for free, I bet too.
Yeah, well, that's what broke the camel's back is that he didn't pay them, and that's his income for his family sort of thing, and he then sparked up, when are we getting paid, and then it turned out that the guy that orchestrated all that also took a lot of money from that church and left as well.
The
leader of the Toowoomba side of things. So they're a very it's just different, I guess. It's just something that you'd never think about until you reflect on it.
Yeah.
And then you're like, whoa, this was fucking weird.
When you do reflect on it with your siblings and you sort of tell stories and say, you know, how effed up was that? Can you tell me anything that you may have witnessed or experienced that has stayed with you?
The whole congregation was very music focused. So things that stayed with me is that if you weren't good at music, you weren't accepted.
Yeah, right.
So for myself, like I played almost every musical instrument under the sun to fit in.
Yeah.
Because I guess for, you know, to be seen as someone that's doing well in the church, you made it to the, sounds funny, but you made it to like the Sunday stage band, and that was seen as like, you're in,
and that's all you wanted.
That's all I wanted.
Sunday stage band.
Give me that Sunday trumpet area. I'm there.
What did you play?
Trumpet.
Did you?
Yeah.
What else?
I played a lot of piano. I played piano for probably 12 years.
Yeah.
I played trumpet. I played tuba. I played guitar. I played drums.
And that was a form of receiving love,
yes,
and attention.
Yeah, that was a form of fitting in. In that realm. So like, it was sort of funny. The guys that I grew up with as well, that were my age. They you had to excel at music to fit in, and one was a good trombone player, one was a good pianist, and the other one was a good trumpet player as well. So it was a bit of a rivalry between men here.
Do you still play?
No. We bought a keyboard not too long ago.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that stuff's like riding a bike, so I can sort of jump back in and play that whenever I want. I don't know how I would go playing a trumpet, though, because it's a lot of, like, mouth, like, tightening and breathing techniques. And
I'm sure the music will be a bit different in the church than you would in the music you listen to.
Yeah. So, that music. And, like, that was all, like, self-written, like, in the church.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
So it wasn't music that anyone had ever heard of unless you're in the church. Yeah. And then it was like, if you put it into perspective, it was like being in a tribe where the sounds and the music and the percussion and everything like sort of stirred something in people, and then they'd move on to another song and they'd do so, and then all of a sudden they'd start, you know, speaking in tongues and
Really?
Yeah. So witnessed a lot of that. Participated in a bit of it, but
like strange ritual type.
Yeah. So
like ceremonies kind of thing.
Yeah. So I can't even explain it to you, but it's like when there's a lot of energy in a room, and say there's 300 people. You know, we used to go down there for every Easter weekend. We would all go to Brisbane, and the whole the conglomerates from all around Australia would go.
Oh, so you started on the sunny coast and then did it branch down to Brisbane, and that's when you...
No, so they originally started in Brisbane.
Oh, I did it,
and the Sunshine Coast branch is one of them. I believe there's one in Melbourne, there's one in Adelaide, there's one in Cairns, there's one in Emerald, there's one in Stanthorpe.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
So, but Brisbane was your sort of hub. You would go down there.
Base, yeah. So we'd go down there every Easter for as long as I can remember. We'd stay with a family of weirdos. It'd just be weird, and then we'd go down because it was Easter Friday, so we'd have a church session Friday night. Then it'd be Saturday day. Then it'd be Saturday night. Then it'd be Sunday morning. Then it'd be Sunday night, and then you'd be home Monday. And it was just
full on
flat bicky church.
Yeah,
just all day singing and listening to people talking tongues, and it was interesting, and they had so it was when I was growing up in that time, it was a lot of we do youth group.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So sometimes on those Easter long weekends, they'd also have what do they call it? It was like a youth camp. So all the kids from all around the area in that teenage thing would go to the Mapleton Holiday Centre and just get banged up with church stuff for 3 or 4 days and compete in music. And
do they?
Yeah. So there's a lot of pecking order stuff. So if you were good at music, you were seen as the big dog in
a bit of hierarchy.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
And at what point, or what was the catalyst for you, and how old were you when you realised isn't the life for me? Is there something that happened? Was there a pivotal moment, or was it just an age thing where you sort of matured and had a look around and realised, man, this is strange. I don't like this.
a lot of it had to do with sport for me, I believe. So,
were you not allowed to play sport?
You weren't allowed to excel at sport.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if you were seen as sort of being good at sport,
wait, so you could be shit at it. And
if you were shit at it,
they wouldn't care.
Yeah. As long as you were good at music.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So if you excelled at sport, that was seen as worshipping a false idol.
Oh, right.
Which makes no sense to me because, like, if you excelled at music, then that's also a false idol. So it's like
a lot of contradictions there.
So how do you, like, sport and music is two hobbies?
Yeah. Why is one worse than the other?
So because one benefited the church. So I sort of started to get good at certain sports, rugby, for instance, when I was about 13, and that was when you'd have the chats with the guys that are older with you and coming and saying, "Look, this is starting to turn into a false idol for you. Like, we don't believe that this is the way for you. This is, no one in this church excelled at this sport.
So you can't. Would they ever threaten you with the thought of, like, if you keep going down this path, you're going to go to hell? Was there any of that sort of chat?
Yes.
Oh,
definitely.
Was there?
Yeah, definitely. So it was like with rugby, there's a lot of the drinking culture.
Of course, yeah.
That sort of stuff that that leads to sins and that leads to you being a sinner.
Yeah.
So it was around that 13-year-old time and started to go into like making like Sunny Coast teams and playing in those carnivals and stuff. And I think it was one year it sort of coincided with one of those youth group camps. So it was a choice for me. And my parents said, this is a choice for you, but it was almost like a trap. Like,
I dare you.
Yeah, we know you're going to choose this rugby camp, but if you do, you're going to be reprimanded. So I chose it, obviously.
Yeah.
And then came out of that, and then it was like, this doesn't feel like something that is going to help me grow. This is almost going to be like not rugby, but the church.
The church.
This feels like this is going to limit who I am as a person.
Was that at 13 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of church is obviously spiritual based and that sort of stuff. You gain a lot of exposure to that very early, so you're very aware of how you are feeling, how certain things make you feel, how you're very aware of that sort of stuff. So yeah, about that 13-year-old age, I was like, right, this is not for me. But I'm also 13, and if I say I'm not going to church anymore, I'll probably be out in the street.
Yeah.
So it was that playing the game until I was old enough to go, right,
survive on my feet.
We can probably have a crack at this at my own
expense. Yeah.
So, and that came. It was about 16 at the time, and then my little sister, which I don't have the greatest relationship with my little sister because of still what happened when I was 16, and she was coming. She's 3 years younger than me, so she was just coming into puberty. A lot of emotions, a lot of hormones, and then she ended up having a bad episode, and that sort of took the light off me because my parents' attention was focused on her.
As in like a mental breakdown. Yeah. Was that church sort of related?
Yeah.
The pressure and the stress of that.
Yeah. And so that was like, ding, this is my opportunity now to
slip out the back door.
Slip out the back door because all the focus is on her.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna chill and
get out of here.
Yeah, get out of here. And then I'd always get these phone calls on like Sunday mornings or Sunday afternoons, like, oh, where were you today? Or
so you were still living at your parents' house,
yes,
but they're not going to the church,
yes,
and then they'll come home and go, where were you?
Yes,
and what would you say?
I'd just be like, oh, I didn't want to go today, but and to their they all had a lot going on with my little sister, so
they couldn't.
Me just saying I'm not going to church was very
minor issue
compared to what was going on. So that was my opportunity to get out.
I remember you saying to me a little while ago that they gave you contracts.
Yes, and that was also like a time for me to be like, this is not for me. So about that 16-year-old age, they were bringing in contracts to commit to the church, commit to their way.
For life.
For life, yeah. I don't know, you know. At that time, when someone gives you a contract at your 16, you don't know what to do. Now, if they said to give me a contract to say commit to your life, I'd just say beat it.
Especially when the contract says you've got to pay them, not the other way around.
Yeah, exactly. And that was also a big thing as well. Like, I started working at that time just at the IGA, and the parents were like, yeah, you know, you've got to pay tithe.
Yeah, what is it? What's the percentage?
10%.
10%.
Yeah, so, you know, I was only earning $100 maybe. That was probably a good week, and I was like, I'm not giving these guys $10 a week.
Fuck that.
That's phone credit.
Yeah, yeah, back then. Yeah. So were your parents high up?
My dad especially was very high up in the church communities, just seen as a leader. Obviously with his with our background as well. Like he decided when I was very young. So I was born in Cairns, and I think we moved then to the coast. Well, we moved to Gingin first when I was about 2 years old. But back then, he made a decision that he doesn't want to grow his kids up in Cairns, and because it's back then especially it was pretty gnarly up there. So for a young Indigenous family, he thought, look, let's do a move.
Better life.
Yeah. So we moved then to Gingin, and then we moved to the Sunshine Coast when I was about 4 years old. And then just because my dad is he's a natural leader as it is, and very good at talking as well. So he was seen as like the church leader back then, and he was very good with like teenage kids and helping them and doing that. So he's seen as like a leader in that realm. And he used to speak on Sundays as well. Like,
did he?
Big sermons.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff. So, he was essentially one of the elders in the church. Not the big elders, because there were a couple of big dogs there, but he was one of the few. And
then when you were sort of contemplating leaving, could you speak to your mum and dad about it, and sort of have open dialogue?
No, there was never any open dialogue about it, or it was just seen as, I wanted to leave, and they would see that as you were just choosing the way of the world.
Is that what you feared the most about leaving too? Was getting disowned by your family?
Yeah, 100%. And that fear of shit, I'm going to have to survive here
on my own.
And I was still at high school, and I ended up leaving. I moved out of home probably about 2 weeks after schoolies, so I was still 17 at the time. Moved out just because it was just too, especially with my sister as well. There's just too much going on in that space. So I thought, let's move out and see how I go out there in the big wide world.
So where did you move to? Did you find a place or?
No, so it was a guy from that worked for my dad. So I moved in with him in behind the BP in Maroochydore.
Yeah.
So I was there for a couple of years, and then moved out with mates. And
looking back on it, were you angry as a kid?
Definitely.
You were.
Yeah. Especially with not really knowing my background and hearing stories as well of my old man's past. He was a very angry person as well. So I didn't really know much about that, but I just knew that I was very aggressive, very angry, and didn't know how to deal with it properly. And
express it, yeah.
And, expression for me at that point of time was rugby. Like, I could go out and go and try and hurt people as much as possible. Then I'd be good for another week.
Well, I don't think you hurt. I watched you play Gatwick Hammers of rugby. I don't think you hurt anyone, did you?
No, I didn't hurt anyone. I thought I did.
Not with those grip gloves you were wearing.
The shoulder pads, bike pants down to the
knees. So when you left, did you feel like you were very isolated and you couldn't talk to anyone because no one could quite relate to your situation?
Definitely around my friendship circle as well, at school, that sort of stuff, because it was, I hid a lot of that of my church, that I was still at church growing up. No one really knew about it because they just knew that I had strict parents. Yeah.
Did you feel like you were going to get bullied, or did you feel embarrassed or something about it?
Definitely felt embarrassed.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. Because deep down I knew that wasn't me.
Yeah.
But the situation of me feeling like if I told people this, that they'd be like, oh, you're churchy
Yeah.
guy, but I just tried to hide that as much as possible. So
Yeah.
like, oh, what are you doing Sunday? Oh, I'm busy.
Busy. You're always busy on Easter and Christmas.
Oh, like even like when you start going to parties when you're like 15 or 16 and then starting getting invited, they'd be like, oh yeah, we got party or birthday party Saturday night. And I'm just like,
No.
no.
And that's an interesting thing, a topic is because it seemed like you missed out or delayed that period of teenager, adolescent years when you meet girls or you go out and party and you do that, that socialize, that awkward socializing moments.
Yeah.
It's like you didn't skip it, you just delayed it until you're...
And I definitely caught up on it.
Yeah. You made up for lost time.
Yeah, definitely made up for lost time.
But was that hard for you going through that a little bit later than everyone else?
I guess looking back on it, it just was. It was what it was. Yeah. So like, I didn't feel like I was catching up. It felt like I was missing out. Definitely.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, I had to play that catch-22 of if I go out and then my parents catch me, like I'm screwed here. Like I've got nothing. I've got no plan B. I've got no nothing to fall back on. I wouldn't be able to go to my mate's house and go, oh, can I just stay here for a bit? A couple of alarm bells would probably ring then. So in that way, it was like I was almost protecting my parents' image as well.
Yeah.
In that point, because I didn't want people to see that my parents were also in this weird religion.
Yeah.
That we were just weirdos.
Yeah. Is your parents still in the religion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are they the only ones in your family that are still in it?
Yes. The rest of the family, not a chance.
Yeah. Right. And what's the relationship with the siblings and your parents?
So,
and vice versa, is it?
It's funny because I'm very now strong in what I believe in, and which is I'm very anti. I'm not anti-religious. I'm anti that religion, that establishment that they went to. Anyone can believe whatever they want to believe. That's fine. Just don't push it onto anyone. So they don't ever. It's funny. They don't ever talk to me about stuff in the church anymore. They do. They tried on the other siblings, but because I'm a bit of a strong-headed, stubborn person, I'll fire back at them with a fair few real answers, and I don't
have any answers. They don't real questions. They don't have answers for.
They just leave me alone. So it's weird because I'm in business with my old man, and that business relationship is good. Our actual then social aspect of father to son is probably pretty limited.
Yeah.
Because just because of that religious
that background there. Yeah.
So, and that's the same with pretty much I believe all of my siblings as well. Like we're close to a point, but when you want to go deeper, that's when it's like that's not happening.
You said earlier that you're pretty strong-minded and you have your own beliefs. Were you always like that, or when you left the religion, you felt like you had to build your own, I guess, values and morals to live by?
I think I was always like that, from a very young age, and with, I guess, being Aboriginal person as well as having the last name of Mohamed, you sort of had to have a strong will and a strong backbone because you're getting stuff flying at you in all sorts of directions all the time. So you have to be, I just had to be strong-willed, otherwise I was never one of those persons that was, I guess, shy away from a fight as well. I was always, pretty combative, pretty strong-willed in that way. So I guess it's, I've always very strong-willed from a very young age, knew this is right, this is wrong.
Yeah.
But it was that timing issue for me back then of, I can't leave now.
Yeah.
Let's just hold on for a few years.
And looking back on the religion, I know you said that you're not anti-religion, you're anti that religion.
Yes.
Do you feel like it was a con? Do you feel like the things you experienced and witnessed, it was not fake, but...
Definitely.
Definitely?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like what Christianity is as a whole is totally different to what that church was.
What they were representing.
Yeah, what they were representing and what they're about. They take, for instance, like they take this Bible so literally, like it's ridiculous how literally they take it. And I've said this to my mum and dad. I said, you do realise though that Bible has been edited, I don't know, 400 times since it's the one that you're currently reading. So what they actually wrote probably at the start is totally different to what you're reading now, but you're taking this literally.
Yeah.
It's just, oh no. And
what is it? Is it a fear thing? Is it an attachment thing? Why are they so? Not saying your parents, but people in that church. Why do they attach themselves so wholeheartedly to it?
I think,
in your opinion,
I think then it's the fear of the unknown and the fear of, all right, if I don't have this, what else do I have?
Yeah.
And you see that, like I bump into these church people every now and again, and they are so, in their bubble of this church, they are so strong. They are outside of that in the real world. They're super socially awkward. They can't really interact with people.
Is that right?
Yeah. So in their church little realm,
it's their comfort zone. That's their space.
Yeah, they're good to go.
But in the real world, they crumble.
Yeah, they're not. They're almost like robots in that sense that they're like they can't
institutionalized kind of thing.
100%.
Oh wow.
So it's and like I ran actually into a bloke that I grew up with in it probably about 6 months ago now at the servo, and I just was having a chat to him, just how I chat to everyone, and the responses and the sort of, you can just tell that they're just how would you put it? They're just awkward, and they just don't know how to respond, and they don't know how to communicate like a normal person. You're just like, wow, this is.
Do you think they're
strange?
Do you feel like they're lost?
Yes, I do feel sorry for them.
You do?
Yeah. Definitely. Because I even chatted to a guy that he's a part of in my business team, and he only just left. He grew up in it, and he's now mid-40s, but he only left 2 years ago. I actually only chatted to him about it last week, and I said, look, mate, how are you going, like finding friends and
reconnecting,
and he said, mate, like you don't understand how much of how much of a toxic culture that place is until you leave, and then once you leave, you're like, wow, this is what have I been doing? So he had like guys that were best men at his wedding and stuff like that. Don't even talk to him anymore. Like, don't even give him the time of day. Guys that he grew up with from birth, like his dad's a minister in the church, and he's mid-40s now, and guys that are his age that he grew up with his whole life don't even talk to him anymore, which is just, it's gnarly.
It is gnarly, yeah.
Yeah, and then so for him it was like, who am I now without this church? And, you take that aspect away from a lot of those people, and they were just lost.
Yeah, empty inside, yeah.
So it is, I do feel sorry for them, because there is a lot more to this life than just being in that circle of whatever that is. Yeah.
When you left, did a lot of your resentment or bad feelings, even with how you were treated after you left, and did it all catch up to you? Did you have any dark points in your life?
Definitely at the start, because it was, you lost that relationship with your parents. You sort of, not disowned completely, but you knew that there was a loss of connection there. So it was a time of like, man, have I done the right thing here? What am I going to do? Am I going to, very, very, not super dark moments, because as well at that age, it was, let's get on the piss.
You can still enjoy yourself, but there's a little bit of you going, what's my next step?
Yeah, and then as well, like, it is not sad, but it's not even disappointing. It just is what it is in regards to that relationship with my parents. It's like we could have been so much more freer and open talking to each other about, especially growing up, about, let's just say, like the whole, like sexually, like you were never allowed to talk about anything about that growing up.
Of course, so you couldn't.
No, so
We no masturbation or anything.
No masturbation. If you
Did you sneak one in?
always.
Did you?
Always. And then when I found out that I could, it was like, we're on here, boys. Let's sneak away all the time.
Did you do it? No, absolutely not.
Yeah, but it was like, it was funny. You weren't allowed to masturbate. It was called relieving yourself for God. So apparently, and I've never done this, but apparently what you're meant to do is you're meant to be like reading scripture from the Bible while relieving yourself, which I never did, by the way. I just don't.
Imagine getting turned on by the Bible. From a 4,000 year ago book.
Oh yeah, Mary.
Yeah. It's so strange how they can just reword a phrase or a sentence that suits them, that allows them to do things.
Suits their narrative.
Suits their narrative.
Yeah.
Can't masturbate, but you can relieve for God. It's really strange. I see that across a lot of religions, how they sort of reword things to fit their narrative, then allows them to do it.
Yeah. So yeah, that was and that I guess probably that's one of the main things that stuck with me through my older years now, is that like that sexual connection as well. Like it's something that it's always been taboo.
Yeah.
Growing up. So it's that's sort of what's carried on in my
Now.
life. Yeah, no, not taboo, but like, how would you put it? Very closed off in that sense.
Not as open and
yeah, very closed.
Still happens.
Still happens. Yeah, it still happens.
Yeah.
But very closed off, I guess, in that sense.
Like you wouldn't be watching any porn or anything.
Not really.
No,
No, it's just...
Yeah. Well, you can if you want.
Can if you want. But not really. Like it.
Yeah.
That whole side of it was just all very taboo, and still like, my partner Megan she calls me frigid all the time. So
shouldn't laugh.
But yeah, so that's been a bit of a roadblock for me as well. Is that intimacy and that sexual connection, because it's like it's just so
inbred into you, isn't it? Yeah.
To me, that it's going to take still some time to unwind all of that. And
did you ever go see a psychologist or anything to talk about some of these things?
I did probably 5 years ago now. I did. I was in a bit of a dark place with sort of career-wise, and sort of stuff had happened that I sort of know I needed some help that way. But not really in that sense of trying to unlock that. It is something that my partner Megan is pushing me to do. And I just it's funny. I feel like I'm okay. But until you sort of start talking about it, you're like, I'm not okay. Maybe. I don't know.
It's when you go digging around, you realise that there's some things that you suppress, and I'm still doing that now. I think if you be a bit naive and think that there's nothing there, you'll just tell yourself that you're okay.
Yeah. And some stuff's happened in my life probably the last 6 months where, like, I do see he's sort of like a business coach, but a life coach as well. So I see him pretty regularly, and we talk about what's going on in my head, and
that's helped.
That's helped hugely. I've been seeing him for about 2 years now. Sort of.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, every couple of weeks as we catch up on Zoom, or we talk fairly often. And so he's helped me really about being present, not focusing on the past. There's a great opportunity in our business for future. So really just honing in on that and not being what would we talk about? It's more of not letting, like, everyone's emotional, but not being emotional when making important decisions.
Yeah. Being reactive and keeping your level head.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. So that's what I'm working on currently. Is that sort of mindset.
Yeah, and looking back on it, what are your feelings of your childhood? Do you just feel like you missed out on a lot? Do you feel like...
I guess not too much, because I didn't know what every other child was doing, so I couldn't really
relate or anything
like that. Like what we grew up with is what we grew. And in saying that, like, it wasn't like we were locked in a room 7 days and then come out for church.
Reading the Bible, relieving yourself.
Relieving yourself constantly. It was more like we did socialise with other kids, and we obviously went to school and that, but it was restricted into who you could socialise with, who you could have fun with, who your friends were. Your weekends were very much Friday nights, church, Saturday nights.
Very structured. Youth
group, Sundays, church. And church, I look at other churches and, that goes for 2 hours and you're in, you're on. But this is like you're there at 8 o'clock. Church starts at 9. You're there at 7:30 because I was in the band. So you're there.
Had to warm up.
Yeah. Getting the lungs ready. For an hour and a half, then church started at 9, and then you wouldn't leave until maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's a full day event, and then afterwards you'd get together and you'd do a little lunch, or we'd play touch footy, and then you're in bed and you.
So overall, it's. I mean, there are some light sides of it.
Yes,
but at the same time, there were some aspects of it that just. But I guess that's everyone's childhood.
So it's not like a.
Yeah.
It wasn't
You wouldn't say it's traumatising or
not
anything
traumatising.
Like
it was just something that I don't think many people have experienced.
Yeah,
and
something I've never heard.
Yeah, and something that, unless you're out of it, you can't really reflect on it until when you're older, and you're like, oh, wow, that was super weird. Like, the speaking in tongues was sort of weird, and I remember...
Yeah, go on.
I remember it was at a point where it was just... You just started making stuff up that other people were doing and just trying mimicking what they were doing. So there'd be like a lot of like stuff like that. It was just gibberish.
All right. So do you think that it's an actual language?
No.
Or everyone was just in on it?
Everyone is just in on it to fit in, I believe. It just nonsense. And like the people that were in this church weren't dummies. Like there was doctors, lawyers, there's all sorts of
highly educated
people, but then just talking gibberish. And you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
What are you doing? and I was copying them, so I'm a bigger idiot.
But you're 12, so
yeah. So I was that 12 to 40.
You've got that excuse of being young and naive. I'm just following you.
I can definitely talk in tongues because it's just gibberish.
Yeah. A bit like Slytherin.
Exactly like that. A sort of doctrine of Slytherin.
You mentioned earlier that you had a sort of problem trying to find your identity, and I guess that's going to lead into what we're going to talk about now. Can you talk to me about the process that you went under to find out who you were, essentially? So,
growing up is interesting because I don't think many people have this. It's the Aboriginal side of me, and then there's the Malaysian side as well, which is where I got Mohammed from. So growing up, my dad didn't have a very good relationship with his dad, so I actually don't know jack about my Malaysian side of things. So my mum's fully English, all my relatives on her side are still over in England, so I have a small connection with them. But what drew home for me was my Indigenous connection, and that's how I associate myself. I can associate myself as an Indigenous man. But growing up, that was, how'd you put it? It was almost like embarrassing to say that you're an Indigenous person. So
is that in the church or just as a kid? In general, yeah.
As in general, it was sort of like Aboriginal,
looked down upon a little bit.
Looked down upon, definitely. So it was very much. I didn't think about it at all until I got invited to play on the Lloyd McDermott rugby team when I was in high school, which is an all-Australian Indigenous team. And it was only then that I was like, holy crap, I have no idea who I am. And they were always asking me, like, are you Koori or are you a Murray? And I'm like,
my name's Joel.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what's the difference?
Yeah, and then I found out, obviously, that Murray's Queensland, Koori's New South Wales. Yeah. So I was like, oh, I'm a Murray.
Yeah.
And then, just being around that space, it just opened up my eyes. And this was, when I was 17, and I was like, wow, like, I have no idea about this whole side of me at all. Knew we were Indigenous, obviously, but didn't know anything.
Especially growing up on the sunny coast, there's not many...
Growing up on the sunny coast as well, like, I feel like, and being in that religion...
very isolated, yeah.
Very isolated, very white. So had no real connection to culture then. And so it was... so from then, from 17 till probably 10 years then down the track till I was late 20s, we started doing some work up in North Queensland, because then it was, for us in our business, being an Indigenous concrete company opened up us to opportunities to like government work and a lot of sorts of stuff like that. So I started getting involved in that, and then just realised like, if I'm going to be a part of this, I need to be a part of this and fully dive in. So we started going up to Cairns. My parents moved up to Cairns at that point when I was about 27, and I was, going back and forth and realising, man, I need to actually be more connected here. Like, I feel like there's an opportunity now for me in this space to help other people that, like I said, my childhood was very white. I grew up very, I feel like I had a pretty blessed childhood as opposed to some other people. So I thought, if I can help if I can help the next generation break out of the position that they're in, then, I feel like I've done a good job. So that's where I'm at.
Is that where your sort of mob's from? Is up in
Cairns?
Yeah.
So I'm here at Kanji, so that's Cairns to North to Port Douglas. So that whole stretch there is my traditional land.
Did you feel like when you reconnected with your culture, did you feel like that was the missing piece in your identity, something that you're yearning for?
Yeah, definitely. And, when I still do want to, dive more into my Malaysian side as well, but definitely it felt like it was a missing part of me. Like I had no certain like feelings. Like when I first moved up to Cairns, it was, I've never felt this anywhere else before in my life. Like I've travelled to Asia, America, Europe, done all that. But it was when I moved to North Queensland and we'd start going for like walks, me and Megan, and going places. You feel this connection that is just something I can't describe it. It was almost like someone to put like a vice right on my chest and was closing it, and it was heavy to breathe, it was heavy to move, and like I was like, we'd go for walks and I'd be like, I have to stop, and I feel like I'm semi-fit, like going for a
golf pro.
Going for a 3K walk should be fine.
You're struggling.
Yeah, but struggling, and then we moved out of that certain area, and I was fine again, and it was like, what is this? Why do I feel like this? And then you don't really know until you start talking to other Indigenous people. Like, hey, I felt like this when I did that. And they're like, yeah, because that place that you were walking was a spiritual ground. And that stuff happened there that back in the day that,
like bad things.
Bad things that I could only feel. And Megan was fine, but it was me. And I was like, like I feel.
Have you read a bit about that, how it's generational trauma almost, that the things that you're feeling is things that's happened to your people for generations?
Yeah, it's generational oppression.
Yeah,
definitely. And that's, we can't change how I look at it. I look at it sort of as the positive side of things, is that you can't change what's happened in the past, but you can definitely change the future. And we have it's sort of slowly changing in
certain aspects,
but I believe now it's up to my generation and the generation and that's after us to really push that, because the Indigenous people are beautiful people. Like they're amazing. They're not, the government's push, I guess, for the Indigenous side of things is just to throw more money at them, but they don't actually hold value in money. Like you throw money at them, they're just going to spend it because there's no value to them. Their value to them is in their country and in their people.
Yeah.
So if we can, instead of throwing resources at just throwing money at them, let's throw resources at getting people connected back with their country, getting connected back in their community. And that's where I believe that the real change is.
It's so good you mentioned that, because I feel like Australia as a country is trying to solve an Indigenous problem with a non-Indigenous solution.
Yes.
So they're trying to throw money at Indigenous people who don't hold value to money.
Yeah.
Thinking that, why aren't they happy? We're giving them millions of dollars. Why are they still living like this? And I think that there's a disconnection there that educational wise, that the more we know about each other, the better we can understand each other and the better relationship can be. But I don't feel like the non-Indigenous are trying to understand fully the Indigenous culture and their way of life and their history to try to work together. I think they're just trying to solve it by just throwing money at. It's the easiest possible thing. And then not understanding that they don't want money. They don't want cars. Like my mum and dad work out in the mines in WA on Aboriginal land. They got permission to mine out there. I don't know if they actually got permission, but they got permission to go mine out there. And one of the things was they give, I think it's like $2 million to the Indigenous community out there. I went for a drive out to the Indigenous community, and they're all living in little corrugated iron houses and huts, and they give them cars, and all the cars are burnt. And they're wondering why they don't want them. And I'm like, they don't hold value to them. They don't want it.
I don't want it.
They drive it until the fuels run out, and then they go, well, fuck it, we'll throw it off the side of the road.
Burn it and we'll get another one.
And I work with a couple of Aboriginal friends, and I'm really interested in Aboriginal culture because I think it's such an insult that we can go to school and we learn about Japanese and Japanese language, and you can learn French and Spanish, but there's nothing on Aboriginal culture at all.
There's stuff on colonisation.
Yes.
And how Captain Cook came to Australia and how Australia was colonised. Before that, and that's, as well as with that generational oppression, it's like I feel like a lot of stories in that realm are lost and not recorded, and also due to that, that educational barrier as well, like they didn't have the opportunity to record those stories as well. So that's where I believe that we could make a change. Like I am friends with a couple of pretty powerful Indigenous people that are doing well in their businesses as well. So we're on the same page of getting, like, let's try and get these stories back, and let's try and educate Australia of what Aboriginal people are, because the stigma around Aboriginal people is
there's a misconception there, and I think I've chatted to some of my friends, and I think we might have one negative experience with an Aboriginal person, and then we paint all them the same or label them all the same. And it's annoying because I've had more negative experience with non-Indigenous Australians than I have with Indigenous Australians. Yet I don't say all white non-Indigenous people are shitty human beings. But we'll do that with Aboriginals. 100%. And it grinds my gears.
Because it's just the stigma behind them and all. And because the main thing behind it all is money. So, not to sound anti-white, but the society we are in is very monetary driven. Whereas I believe the Indigenous people are not monetary driven at all. So if you're holding your value to monetary values the whole time, people that don't hold that to that are seen as less.
Exactly.
So it's a very interesting journey that I'm on, and I'm still currently on, about rediscovering that and trying to make a change in society regarding Indigenous people, because they're a wealth of knowledge. They're
beautiful cultural
people. They're very family orientated. They support their own. They look after their own.
And that's something that I want to get across to people, is that just because we're different doesn't mean that we should be separated or turned against each other. Like when I look at you, I don't know about Aboriginal culture. So I'm keen, and it's an opportunity for me to learn and ask questions. And like you guys know so much, and I don't know anything. And it's vice versa. You can learn from me as well. So I think it's an opportunity. And Australia has a huge opportunity as a country to have Indigenous Aboriginal culture as part of their identity. And I don't feel like it is enough.
I don't feel like you look at, for instance, the New Zealand culture and how much they've they're part of the Maori culture, like they love that about their culture. Where I feel like ours is the Indigenous culture, but it's sort of like still that stigma of...
Yeah, I was chatting to some of my Kiwi friends, and they were saying there's towns in New Zealand that only speak Maori, So if you live there, and you could be non-Maori, but if you live in that country, you have to learn it, you have to speak it, you have to learn it, all the culture around it, and that's how they live. And I went, that's amazing.
It'd be pretty wild to do that in Australia because there's thousands of dialects.
Oh, yeah, of course it would be. Yeah.
So, you move 10 k's up the road and it's a different dialect. But also a lot of that dialect has also been lost. So trying to regain that is its own struggle in itself because obviously a lot of it's not recorded. You're going to have to then talk to very old people in that space to try and reconnect that dialect, and it'd be such a cool opportunity for Australia to have a dictionary, or a thesaurus regarding the Indigenous dialect of that area, which is we are slowly changing, and it's crazy now that they're actually starting to call places from their actual Indigenous name,
and that's something that. When Fraser Island got changed, and I saw the comment, I went, how good's that? And I saw the comments, and there was a lot of racist comments on there. And I couldn't understand how people could be so negative towards that.
Yeah, I don't understand it either.
I don't know how we wouldn't want to embrace that side of us, because if you call yourself an Australian, that means Aboriginal culture is Australian culture.
Exactly.
So we're one of the same. It's not I'm Australian, but I'm not part of the Aboriginal culture. We're all the same. Yeah. We're all one.
Yeah, 100%. Such a weird stigma around that because I believe that other countries definitely embrace their Indigenous heritage. Maybe some not as better as others, but we would probably almost have to be the worst.
I think so.
Yeah. Which you can look at it two ways. You can get down and be disheartened by that, or you can see it as an opportunity to grow that misunderstanding.
I feel like you're right, dude. I felt like I've talked to a lot of my friends who are teachers and just asking them, getting a gauge on what's being taught in school. And there are a lot of things, there's a lot of improvements, especially when we were at school. There was nothing when we were at school.
No.
But now there are some Aboriginal history and culture in the curriculum now, and they're learning a lot about it.
Yep.
Something that I wanted to ask you is, the reason why I want change so badly is because I went on my own and researched what actually happened during the colonisation and how traumatic and brutal it was. And that created empathy within me that I now look at that totally differently. Do you think that as harsh and as traumatic as that was, do you think people need to learn about it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Because, when we were back in school learning about colonisation, it was Captain Cook came to Australia and discovered...
Yeah. And the Aboriginal said, here, take the land.
Yeah,
it's all sweet.
They didn't mention, the genocide of almost a whole race.
Yes.
And the ones that survived are the ones who I get to live now through. So I believe that needs to definitely be just not preached, but almost you just need to be aware that what happened, and yes, it happened, a long time ago, or not even a long time ago. Like it's 3 generations ago.
Yeah.
Like that's not long in the realm.
And when the generations don't heal their trauma or don't have access to heal the trauma, it just gets passed on in the next generation and the next generation, and
that's what I was talking about, generational oppression.
Yeah.
If you're not fixing the problem there, it's just going to keep.
Yeah, it's not going to stop.
It's not going to stop, and especially the way that we're behaving now towards it, it's only just going to keep getting worse. Like I'm a big no against the voice in Parliament. I believe that, like what we discussed before, it's just a white solution to the problem. Yes, it's cool, but they also brought out something not too long ago about that. It doesn't really matter what that voice says. We're still going to make our own decision. So it's like, what's the point of this?
It's like a fake voice. It's like, we just want you to feel included, but not actually have any real value
Yeah.
or say in anything.
So it's like,
we're just trying to fit a quota. We've got to have someone Aboriginal just to fit the quota so you can stand there, but your voice doesn't actually matter. Can you just be quiet?
Yeah, and then they're doing a whole referendum for it.
Yeah.
It's like, you're wasting so much money doing that. How about putting that money into the communities and then going to each community and going, all right, that looks like the leader in that community. Let's go around and not give him money, but let's go around and support him so that he can then build the next generation around changing the cycle that they're in.
Yeah.
Because it's a vicious cycle.
And it's a very hard, it can seem like a very hard problem to solve when they're trying to find a solution for that.
But the solution is definitely, for me, it's definitely not, let's not just keep throwing money willy-nilly at the problem, because it's been proven that doesn't work. And two, this voice to parliament thing is just nothing.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a way to look like we're doing something, but we're actually doing nothing. So that it's hard to say, because I have this conversation with many people and they're like, oh, how good's voice to parliament? And I'm like, well, not really. What's it doing?
Yeah.
Like, cool.
And they go, oh, what?
Yeah,
I thought you'd be all for it.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, not really. It's sort of just like a whitewashing. It's just kicking the problem down the road a little bit further.
Yeah. Next generation can do it.
Next generation, you know, what was it? 6 years ago we said sorry.
Yeah.
Now we're giving you a voice to parliament.
Yeah.
Another 6 years we might
try to do something.
Yeah. We'll create something else, like a welcome to country. So let's just do that again.
Something that I would like to touch on with you is your experiences with racism in this country. The reason I asked that, because my first real experience with racism was I was walking in Mooloolaba with Leffers on Australia Day, and we were walking past that Macca's that used to be there.
Yep.
And we were going down to the beach, and it was Australia Day, and there was an Asian guy that looked like he just finished work. It looked like he was wearing sort of restaurant gear. And he was walking towards us about 40 metres away in this car, big fucking four-wheel drive with Southern Cross. Yeah, you know where I'm going with this. Southern Cross like stickers on it and Australian flags hanging out the window, and they came steaming around the corner, and this guy rolls down his window, pops his head out and yells at the Asian guy, "Get the fuck out of my country, you Asian C-word." And I remember I was probably 14 with Leffers at the time.
Yep.
And we stopped there shook. Like I couldn't believe what I just heard. And this Asian fella didn't even glance over, didn't even look, didn't even react to it, just kept walking and walked straight past us. And we sort of looked at him and he didn't even bat an eyelid, I'm like, I wonder if he heard it. And I was like, Leffers was like, oh, maybe he doesn't understand English. It's like trying to like, hopefully he doesn't understand English. Yeah. Hopefully he didn't hear that.
He probably definitely did.
But later in life, I've looked back at that moment and I've maybe realised that he gets it so much that he's numb to it and doesn't even react to it anymore. That's a normal day for him, and how sad that is.
Definitely. I've got two ends of the straw here. One being Indigenous, so the black part, and then two with my last name being Mohamed.
Not a very common last name. Not
a very common last name, especially on the Sunshine Coast. So that I've got two ends of the sword there, in that realm of racism. A lot like you said, you deal with it so much on a day-to-day basis that, for instance, if a friend, just randomly just pops a race joke in there, like, it's fine. But to any, like, for me, how I've dealt with it is that's fine because I trust that person. I know that they don't have bad intent at heart. But if it's someone else that I completely don't know and does that, then it's like the anger comes out inside of me, and it's let's get it on. In your opinion, how do we solve that issue of racism? Is it an educational thing? Is it sometimes I think it's not I fear you. It's more so I don't know you. Yeah, I don't know who you are. I don't know your background, and then being maybe at home. Parents, like, no one's born a racist. And that's something that I really love my parents for. One of the big things that they instilled in us, that the better you respect yourself, the better you can respect others. And they never, that didn't matter if you're black, white, Asian, if you're what sexual orientation you had, everyone's equal and everyone's the same. So, like, this generation now with a lot of different sexual orientations and a lot of different views on that, that was never a thing, say, 20 years ago. Like, it just wasn't a thing. But now it is, and I believe that's the same with racism. It's like, back 20 years ago, it was definitely a thing. But I feel like it's changing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is definitely a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of just educating people, like, what... There is literally no difference between me and you. You are dark as well, but you're just beach dark.
Mum's brown.
Yeah, but there's no difference between us biologically, apart from my skin has got better pigmentation than yours. Well, not better, but like it can.
You're better than me. I get it.
It reacts.
We get it.
It reacts to the sun better than you.
Yeah.
That's the difference. That's it.
That's it.
There's nothing else. So. Trying to degrade someone on how different their skin reacts to the sun to yours, it's just wild to me. Like, when you put it into that basic principles, it's like...
How silly is that?
How silly is that?
Yeah.
Like, there is no difference between me and you.
And especially when, like, non-Indigenous Australians say, get out of my country, it's like the hypocrisy I hear...
Gross. That is the worst thing.
And just know, I just want people to know how this country was formed.
It's funny, like, so with us moving to North Queensland, establishing a North Queensland arm up there, I have this conversation with people all the time. It's like, oh, you guys are new up here. How long have you been up here for? And I'm like, roughly about 20,000 years or something like that. So and they're like, oh, okay. Yeah, so it's funny in that realm. It's like, get out of my country.
To say to someone, well, you've been in the country for no less than 60 years.
Like, your country has been established for 200 years.
Yeah.
This is not your country.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Slow your roll.
Yeah.
But the Indigenous people aren't like, this is our country.
Yeah.
Like, well, we are to a point because, landmarks and certain areas being destroyed for the growth of economy. But that always has, like, the whole Cronulla riots and that sort of stuff. It's like, get out of our country, we're full. Like, fuck off, we're full. It's like we're actually not full. There's fucking heaps of land in Northern Territory that no one's at. Like, we're not full at all. We're just full in Cronulla because we're full of you guys, fucking bogans. So... Yeah, that the get out of my country thing is so wild to me because I'm like, this is not even your country.
It's such a uneducated statement to say. Going back to that educational thing, I think we all need to have a little bit of dive into our own country and realise how this country was formed, who was here before us, long before us, and not say, this is my land, like this is mine because I was here. Yeah. It's just like,
it's such a colonisational thing to, like, say.
I live here. I live in Maroochydore.
Yeah.
But I recognise that the land that I live on is Aboriginal land. And I'm not saying that I don't feel wanted or I don't feel like this is my home. This is my home. I was born here. But I can recognise that the land I'm living on is Aboriginal. And I want people to understand that it's okay for you to say this is my country, I was born here. But it's also okay to recognise that the land you're living on is Aboriginal land.
100%.
And not go, well, this is my... And be so, like, stubborn and hard-headed, patriotic about it. Like, I've been in the army too. I've served the country.
That's also a thing that gets me. It's like, our parents have fought for this. And you're like, your parents probably didn't fight for this. Your parents were probably accountants or, like...
And even if your grandparents did fight for, they weren't, they wanted to go on when they went to the war, they were like an opportunity to go over and they didn't realise what they were getting themselves into.
And they weren't fighting in Australia. They were fighting in either Vietnam or somewhere else. So it's like, it's hard for me to grasp that that whole thing of, my grandparents came here and they've lived here for 50 years. I'm like, cool.
Been here for 60. Do we trump you there?
Yeah, congratulations. There's no value in that. The value is in what can we do now to make sure that we can all work as a harmonious community.
Yeah, and that goes back that our differences shouldn't separate us. Yeah. It should bring us closer together, and we should embrace it more. Like when you see that they're name changing Aboriginal, sort of non-Indigenous names back to Aboriginal. I love that. I love that we're doing it.
Yeah, 100%.
I think we should do that more often.
Definitely.
And I think that we should have in our curriculum, learning either like a language. I know it's hard because there's so many different dialects, but learning about the culture a little bit more, and like if there's people listening, I think it's obviously they're not going to teach this in schools, but I think everyone should research what actually happened in the genocide and what happened in the colonisation, and
especially for like where they are on country. So like say if you're at, let's say Mountain Creek, for instance, they should bring in an Indigenous leader from that area and talk about what happened in that area at around before colonisation, just so that stories aren't lost, for one, and that two, that the people are getting that education of what it actually was like pre-colonisation. I believe that's probably a pretty powerful thing to do.
Yeah.
Because like you said, school curriculum is just Captain Cook came to Australia.
Very watered down version. I get that for the kids.
Yeah, 100%. Let's just say when you get into high school,
you go, all right, this is
actually what happened. There was a lot of blood.
You sort of gradually start telling the truth a little bit more. Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, please. Yeah. We're running out of time.
Are we?
Yeah.
Oh.
So we've got 8 minutes.
8 minutes, yep.
So we're going to do some... I've got one question before we get into the last questions. This one question is, what do you feel is your passion and your purpose right now?
To be that voice for this next generation. I believe that's and my purpose as well. Like I said before, I feel like I am a very blessed person to be where I am currently. And if I can help, even if it's just one person, break this cycle in the Indigenous space of the oppression and the shame of being an Indigenous person as well, that's a very big thing. There's a lot of shame in saying that you're Indigenous, even though you can definitely tell you're an Indigenous person. It's that shame behind it, and I really would like to change that. And I believe that's my purpose in this world, is to not just me by myself, but getting like-minded people in my in business and in my age bracket to help this next generation, because there is a shift coming, and I believe it's going to be pretty powerful when it starts happening. Yeah,
and even when did you watch that Wallabies game where they sung the national anthem in Aboriginal? Did you see that?
Did that just happen?
It was last year against Africa, I think, and it was the first time.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if you saw that. It was the first time that the national anthem was done in Aboriginal, and then it was done in English.
Mate, I've disassociated myself with Australian rugby for the time being.
We'll edit that out. Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Yep.
When you talked about that religion being a con, and sort of fake and brainwashed, but people still clinging on to it. If they came to you and said, all right, you had a spiritual moment on your land and you could tell like this is like your land, where you're from, your mob, like where you are meant to be, what would you respond to someone who was saying, well, you've got that connection to the land, we've got that spiritual connection to this religion?
What's the difference?
How can you say one's no and one's yes?
I would say to that, one, what I felt, the connection, it was not forced. It wasn't it was just, it happened to me. Like
organically, naturally.
Yeah. It was one time, it was actually when I flew from the coast back to Cairns. This is probably now, probably 18 months ago now. I landed on the tarmac and I was like, holy shit, this is where I'm meant to be.
Really?
This is
home.
This is home. This is where I need to be now. For them, I feel like their connection with that is very forced and also a way for them to fit in. It might happen to people that way as well, but my experience in that religious circle is it's very much forced. That's not putting me on the spot, mate. That's a good question.
Good question. Yeah. So I know that you're familiar with the last closing tradition of the podcast.
Yes.
So we get a family member, a close friend, a loved one. They send in questions for you. This is a testament to who you are and the people that you spend your time with, because the questions that have been sent in have been some of the most thought-provoking questions that I've had someone sent in.
Okay.
From people that I fucking know from a deeper level that are just absolute party animals.
Yep.
So it's very nice to see them give these sort of... I wasn't kind of expecting these questions come through, but the first one's Keefe.
Yep.
If your life so far was a book, would you go back and edit any pages? And what are you looking forward to writing in the chapters ahead?
Would I edit any pages? Not really. I think, that my story is what makes me who I am. So it would be very false of me to edit pages because, without that history and without what I experienced growing up, that if I didn't have that, I would be a different person. So no, the answer to that is no. I definitely wouldn't because, I can look back at it now and some of it's funny and some of it's like, oh, that was weird. And, but never hold resentment in that, it is what it is. For me, part of my journey as well is not to hold on to that as well. Like if people hold on to their traumatic past, well, mine wasn't super traumatic, but if they hold on to that past, that can affect them moving forward.
You never heal. If you keep holding on,
exactly.
You'll never heal.
Exactly.
So I think, exactly. You hit the nail on the head then is the ability to let go. Yeah.
Definitely. Otherwise, you could stay bitter with that forever. And you take that to your grave and then...
serves you no purpose.
You could then pass that on to the next generation and that sort of stuff. So you just want to say, that happened. I can identify that was not for me. I am here now. This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
What was the other part of the question? What would I write for the future?
What are you looking forward to writing in the chapters ahead?
What would I look forward to writing in chapters ahead? If I would be able to, whatever I do, moving forward, that it'd have an impact. Because I feel like the opportunity is for me, especially to make an impact on moving forward. And if I can leave this earth knowing that, not that I've changed the world, but I've at least changed someone's life into the better, then I feel like I've done a really good job.
Yeah, left it in a better place and you found it.
Yeah. 100%.
Kirkwood.
Wood.
The old big Wood. Shout out Wood.
Shout out Wood.
He says, there are 3 versions of you that I know. Work Joel, social Joel, and family Joel.
Yep.
Work Joel is professional, very strong work ethic, and not afraid to make difficult decisions. The social Joel looks from the outside like you don't have a care in the world.
Yep.
Family Joel is compassionate and loving, especially to the females in your life, your mum and Megs.
Yep. Which
do you think is the most authentic version of yourself?
Wow, I was not expecting these questions from these people either. So that's a huge one. Who was the most authentic Joel?
Absolutely. I was thinking it might sound like a mixture. I think a lot of people...
A lot of people have said to me that I'm a very good chameleon. So in my, when I am at work, it's balls to the wall. We've got to get stuff done. Let's go for it. But I have that ability to switch to as soon as it's not work.
Let's have some fun.
Let's catch up with the mates. Or if it's then...
Like family Joel.
It's family Joel and we have to talk on a deeper level. Like Megan's been great for me in that aspect as well, like connecting more to my emotional sides of things and that way. Because I was never very emotional side and like we explained before, it's sort of having emotions and that sort of taboo.
Yeah.
So she's helping me unlock that. So which one would be more authentic? I would say that in general, I am a pretty compassionate person to a point until I know that, that my compassion is then taken as a weakness. Then that's when I'm sort of like, you're just taking advantage of my compassion here. Then it switches. Definitely, I do enjoy having fun. I believe that humans need that playtime. Otherwise, it's just too serious. The world's too serious. Everything's too serious. If you don't have that time to play, then what are you doing? Like you just...
It seems like you've got that life balance sorted. I feel like you said, like when there's work that needs to be done, you're more than willing to get it done. Then you've got that great ability, and not many people have that ability to able to, when work's done, switch off.
Yep.
And let's enjoy our life. A lot of people are in work mode constantly and find it really difficult to to switch off and just enjoy themselves?
Well, currently I'm finding that hard because I'm working from home up in North Queensland, and so I'm running a big company on the Sunshine Coast and in North Queensland. So it's that when it's time to shut off, or when Megan gets home, it's my time to shut off. So it's like having that ability to do. That's my next challenge.
Work is the office too. So, home is the office. Yeah.
So we are currently building another office up there, so I'll have that ability to switch off. But I do feel like there's, all three of those parts are a part of me. None is worse than the other, if that makes sense.
More than the other.
More than the other. Yeah. They all are a part of me, and I recognise that they all. But I don't push my that's who I am into just one category. Like I know that I have to be a different person in different situations. Yeah. And it's just about understanding that and also recognising that. If you can recognise that, I think you can go a long way.
Yeah. Love that. Daniel Forsyth.
Oh, skinny.
Growing up in a Christian family, how has your upbringing and exposure to those values impacted your perspective on life, relationships, and your own mental well-being?
On a morale basis, it did teach me a lot of respect for family. So that has always been something I hold still now, is I respect my family a lot. It also taught me on the other aspect of that, of how not to treat women, because it was a very misogynistic culture of this church. Like the man was the head of the family, he's the one to answer to, and that sort of thing. Yeah, so it actually taught me the opposite of that, where it's like, no, I believe that women are powerful women as well. Women have the ability to do anything that men do. Why are we treating them like
oppressing
this?
Them like
that when men need women. Like if it was just a whole bunch of men in the world, it'd be
chaos.
It'd be relieving yourself to the Bible. So I do believe that they that taught me the opposite of that.
Yeah.
It did teach me how to be a good musician, even though I didn't do jack shit.
I was going to ask you about that. If anything good came out of that time.
Yeah. Music was, as much as it was a pain in the ass practicing piano for freaking 2 hours a day most days.
You've got a skill.
I've got a skill that not many people have. So that was cool. It also did teach me, like I spoke about, to being that. I believe that was this cornerstone of me being able to be a chameleon. So, when I was at school, it was no one knew about church. I could react. I could behave how I wanted to behave. When then I went to church, it was a totally different Joel. Let's pretend to speak in tongues. Let's do all this sorts of stuff to fit in with that area. I mean, you could look at it both ways, as that's positive, and then that also could be a negative as well.
It could be overwhelming at times to keep switching.
Yeah, but I feel like I've got a good balance on that now.
Yeah.
The questions from the people that you've asked me, it's more rattling than the questions.
If people
themselves.
knew
these people
outside of this, that would be more rattling than the questions itself.
The questions itself, like that's what's more rattling than me. Is the actual...
That's when they sent them through. I went, if people only knew these boys.
Oh, classic.
Your last one.
Yes.
Your partner, Megs.
Yep.
Do you think you are the man you are today because of your upbringing, or in spite of it?
Probably more in spite of it, I believe. Like, just because I saw those people, how they grew up and how they were men when I was young, and I'm like, I don't want to be that man. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to, that sort of behaviour just didn't suit who I thought I needed to be. So it's probably, more in spite of it. But then on the catch-22, it's like I was telling you about the misogynistic behaviour. Like, I saw that and was like, I'm not doing that. Let's switch that around on its head and do something better. I believed it was better. So the answer is in spite of it, I would say. It's interesting, though. I'm going to talk to Megan about that later.
I'm going to call Megan after this. No, I think it's great. I think it's that you saw what that you didn't like and you recognize it straight away and was like, when I'm at that age or when I get older, I'm going to do the exact opposite and not fall into that trap of doing the same thing?
Yeah, well, I did go to the extreme of that opposite for a little while, as you do when you're 18 and that, but then, you know, obviously draw that back and then go, still didn't want to behave like that, still didn't want to interact with people like that, still didn't want to look down upon people, and like that's just not who I am. Believe what you want to believe. At the end of the day, be a good person.
Yeah, 100%.
That's my mantra moving forward.
I think we'll end it on that.
Lovely.
Joel,
Elliott,
thank you so much for coming on. I've learned a lot.
Yep.
I didn't know how that conversation was going to go.
Neither, mate. I like I said, I was stressing out about it a bit last night. But then, because when you sent me the questions, I was in a different state. And then when I got to, I was like, oh. That
was social Joel you're in.
Yeah, that was social Joel. Now it was like, all right.
Yeah, this is work Joel.
This is work with the family Joel.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm glad we did this because, again, it's learning more about each other, getting to know each other a bit more, and I feel like we've gotten closer together, so I appreciate it.
Thank you for this opportunity to share my story.
Thanks, mate.
All right.